Hello and welcome. My name is Jess and you're listening to Legaltini, your very own sip of law school. The goal of this podcast is to give you just a taste of what it's like going to law school. Whether you're already in school, considering it, have a loved one currently experiencing the fun that is law school, or you just want to follow my journey, I'm so glad you're here. You can also follow me on Instagram at legaltini_podcast and check out my website legaltini.com. And if you enjoy the podcast, don't forget to rate and review below. Grab your Legaltini and let's take a sip. Good morning. Welcome back to Legaltini. Today I will be talking about the first year of law school, sort of a wrap on that. It's done. Incredible. So I have some reflections and thoughts looking back, and I also have some thoughts looking forward, and also one more thing, I have some ideas for those of you who may be preparing to go to law school this fall, and you're looking for some guidance on what to do with this pesky, precious summer that you have in front of you. It feels like there is a lot of pressure to do the right things, so I'll share my thoughts on that as well. But first, looking back on my experience in my first year of law school, and keep in mind, every person's experience is unique. Even, folks at my school, all of us had very different experiences, but then each school does things differently. So you can have a vastly different experience than other students at other schools, but there are some things that are universal and some things that sort of everybody experiences and goes through. So take my perspective for just what it is. It's one perspective out of hundreds. Okay, so we've all gone through hard times, right? Think back to your life about seasons where you worked the hardest or had to push yourself, not just in school or maybe work, but physically or emotionally. Those times are interesting to look back on because while you remember, sometimes vividly, what you went through, you also have the benefit of hindsight to try to make sense of it and justify decisions, all of that. You can see the ways that that experience impacted where and who you are today, and you can appreciate it, right, for that impact. You can kind of see why that happened, or even if not why, you can see a silver lining, or you can see a benefit that ended up coming out of that hard thing. You might look back at that time and not really remember much of the details. It feels a little fuzzy, almost like you blacked out while everything was happening. And that's okay. That's actually your body's way of coping with the hardship. Sometimes we need to sort of blur the memory of hard things in order to move past them. And for some people, that may be their feeling about year one of law school. It can be a blur because you're so busy, you're just trying to get to the next thing. Or, it could be a blur because you're just not ready to think about it yet and you need to let some of those sharp edges sort of fade away. Listen, if you have just completed your first year of law school, you have gone through a hard thing. Wherever you fall on the scale of success and however you measure that, you have done a hard thing, and you should be super proud of yourself. If everyone could go through this, then more people would be in law school. So even if you are retaking some classes in the fall, if you're taking off a year to get refocused or spend some time deciding how you want to proceed, know and recognize that this experience is still valuable to you. The first piece of this recognition of value is reflection. Reflection is such a key step after any experience that you want to foster into a valuable, life-learning, life-building experience. So often we just race through life without taking time to really reflect and do some introspection and course correct and think about the larger impacts of our experience. So I have 3 things that I want to do with my first year of law school on this podcast for you guys. I want to do 3 R's, which, I try to make it so you can remember it. The first one is reflect. The second one is revise, because we don't want to not learn from things. And the third one is to reframe. So first of all, do take time to reflect. It's important to sit in that for a moment. I spent significant time going through some prompts that I'm going to share with you in just a moment, but going through and actually answering them for myself and being honest with myself about where I stand on these and where I feel like I fall in each of these different areas. So first, I thought about, when was I the happiest this year? And I guess it can get a little bit personal because this is, law school intermingles with the rest of your life. So there's definitely some elements where it's not just law school. You're not going to law school in a vacuum, right? I mean, we all know that you're going to law school while life carries on and while the world continues to move. So when I think about just sort of the law school aspect of this, I would say for both semesters, probably about halfway through is when I felt like, okay, I've got a good cadence. I'm figuring this out a little bit. I feel like what I'm doing seems to be working because I feel prepared for class. I kind of had gotten out some of the kinks at the beginning of the semester. And then obviously when each semester was over, there is this like euphoria of, oh my gosh, thank goodness this is over. So those are when I would say I was happiest. My second question is, when did I struggle the most? And without question, my first thought goes to the beginning of my second semester. It was so tough to get back in the swing of things and figuring out that the old cadence that I had really felt like I got used to in the first semester wasn't working for the second semester. I had to rethink my game plan a little bit because the courses were different, the professors were different, the structure of the exams was going to be different at the end of the semester. I was in more credit hours, and so I just needed more time to read. And so my schedule that I had really gotten used to my first semester wasn't enough, and I had to add reading time into my schedule because I wasn't able to get done all the reading that I needed to get done in the way I needed to do it in the same time frame as the first semester. So I struggled at the beginning of that second semester figuring that out and realizing that, oh, it's not just an equation for every law school semester. You have to tweak it because each class and professor and exam and everything is different. So that was tough, but again, kind of found my groove about halfway through. And though it was more work, I found a cadence that worked to prepare me for class and I felt like was preparing me for exams. My third question is, what worked best to prepare me for class? And I would definitely say that reading with intention and not just reading to get through the number of words or pages that I need to get through. Early mornings ended up being my best friend both semesters, actually. I really learned that the first semester, but even still in the second semester, my brain is just sharper in the morning. I am not a night owl. I can't stay up until 2 a.m. reading. It's plain not effective for me. I so require sleep. I am just like a sleepy gal. I love sleep. It is so important to me. So if I will go to bed and then I can wake up early and get things done and actually retain it. So those early mornings ended up really being important for me to, either finish reading, that's not ideal, but to finish the reading or to really review the material before class started. My fourth question, was there anything that I should have done differently to prepare in advance for finals? And that is tough because I think everybody is different, but for me, using supplements is such a struggle during the semester because it's just more reading. And so it feels like, gosh, I just need to get through this material, and if I'm barely getting through that, how do I add more reading? But I think it's worth putting in the time during the semester, because then once you get to the end, you don't have holes in your understanding. You have a deeper knowledge of sort of those baseline things. So I think I want to try to implement those supplements earlier on in the semester instead of later. Okay, next question. Did I actually follow my plan? Yes and no. I did not end up using flashcards this semester, which was something that I wished last semester, the first one. I wished in the first semester that I had started my flashcards earlier. So then in the second semester, I planned to do flashcards each week. But again, the second semester was just a little bit different, and flashcards didn't really make sense with the content that I was learning for most of my classes. So I did not use them as much as I planned to. I did a little bit. There were definitely still some topics that you just kind of had to rattle off and know. So who knows if I could have used them more, maybe. But what ended up really helping me was just rewriting over and over my attack outline towards the end of the semester. That ended up being better for me than flashcards. I don't know, something about writing kind of commits it to memory for me. So, did I follow my plan? Yeah, sorta. Like, in some ways, absolutely, but in other ways, not really. Next question. Did I take meaningful breaks? Yes, I did. And actually, I feel really passionately about breaks. I feel not nearly as burned out when I'm taking these intentional breaks. And this semester, I think in the week or so before finals, I felt much more energized than the first semester. The first semester I got to finals and felt pretty tired and like I was going in already from operating sort of from a deficit. But this semester I genuinely felt more energized and kind of ready to get at it right before finals started. And I think that I was better this semester about taking intentional and meaningful breaks. Next question is, how do I feel physically? During the semester, I think I already just mentioned this, but I felt much busier and like I had less time for myself and my loved ones. But during finals, I actually felt better physically. And maybe it's because I put in that work during the semester and sort of knew from experience what finals would be like and how to prepare better. And so I did more of that work during the semester. But once I got to finals, I felt pretty decent physically. So I think that's a win. I got to take that as a win. Next question, and there's just two more. Did I feel prepared? So that's an interesting question because I can say yes and no. For two of my exams, and the way that we do our scheduling at my law school is block scheduling. So I have 3 doctrinal classes or sort of like really content-based classes. So I this semester had contracts, property law, and constitutional law. And then I also had a legal research and writing class. So that's all the courses that I had. It was 15 credit hours. So still the same amount of work, but just fewer classes. Some schools have 6 classes that you're in. And so at the end of the semester, you've got like 5 or 6 exams, which feels like so much. That feels like so much. So I'm glad that we do the block scheduling. But anyways, did I feel prepared? So for contracts and property, I felt really prepared going into the exam. I felt like I knew the material backwards and forwards. I felt like I had been doing practice questions and pretty much not nailing it every time, but I knew exactly what it was getting at. For constitutional law, he didn't tell us until about a week before. This feels outrageous to say this aloud. He didn't tell us until about a week before that it would be a multiple choice only exam. And so the whole semester I was really gearing up for, okay, like this topic, how could I write an essay for this? And what essay prompts might he give? And sort of practicing through that. And we even did some practice in class. He would give us a prompt and talk about how would you approach an essay. So it was a little bizarre to then switch gears completely to multiple choice questions because you just study differently for multiple choice questions. So I did not feel as prepared for constitutional law as the other 2 classes, but honestly, I don't think I could have done much differently. It just was kind of a hard turn. And honestly, I just love a good essay where I can explain my thinking instead of just being right or wrong. So it was a tough exam season because property law and constitutional law were both entirely multiple choice. And that was tough. So, did I feel prepared? Yeah, I think as good as I could have been. So that, speaks to my plan and says that I did the things perhaps that I needed to do, as well as I could do them, human possibilities. You have to keep that in mind, that you can't be perfect. Unfortunately for me, because I love things to be in straight lines and I love them to just be done exactly right. But you have to give yourself some grace because, that's what we need. We're humans. Okay, last question. How did I actually do this year based on these feelings and not on grades? And like I was just saying, it's really important for me to do my best. This has been instilled in me for my whole life. My parents were big on this, do your best, not meaning be perfect, but do your best. Like, what is Jess's best? And to me, that means giving everything that I can while remaining healthy, but feeling satisfied by the output. So I would say that I did well. I don't have the highest grades in our class, but I think there's a balance between grades and other commitments. For example, I'll be the president of our health law association next year that I helped this year to start. And, well, not start per se, but per se. I just used legal jargon in everyday life, like I'm Elle Woods. Hilarious. Anyways, the health law group was inactive for a number of years, and so I helped to bring it back. And next year I'll be president of the Health Law Association, which is so exciting. And I'm really, I'm passionate about that. And I think that the efforts that I put towards that group this year will pay off in the long run. I've already made so many great connections through it. So while I, found balance in my experience, and therefore I'm, not the first or even close to that in our class, I don't really care because I got grades that I feel I'm satisfied with. It's not the best ever, but it's fine and it's great. And there is more to life than grades. I think that networking and engagement and community work and doing all these other things is so much more important than only focusing on grades. They're important, but they're not the whole world. So those are my questions. There were 9 of them, and I'll run through them one more time really fast because I know I sort of skimmed through quickly. So 1, when was I happiest? 2, when did I struggle the most? 3, what worked best to prepare for class? 4, was there anything I should have done differently to prepare in advance for finals? 5, did I actually follow my plan? 6, did I take meaningful breaks? 7, how did I feel physically? 8, did I feel prepared? And finally, 9, how did I actually do this year based on feelings and not on grades? So that is our reflect section. Second, we have revise and this is where I'm talking about looking forward because, you don't want to let experiences go by without learning from them. The toughest, worst, most challenging times can be the sources of the most growth if you can channel that struggle into learning. So how can we learn from this experience? Here's what I'm going to channel into growth. I've got 4 things. First of all, meet with professors multiple times. Don't just go once or twice. Make it a regular habit to meet with them after classes. I want to do that even more in future classes because not only does it build great relationships with the professors, but it gives you an opportunity to check in sort of topic by topic instead of in larger swaths of, okay, there's this whole section that I'm kind of confused about. Second, lean on your routine, especially when you're exhausted and don't want to do it. For me, exercise is easy to cut out when I'm pressed for time, but it helps with stress like literally nothing else can do for me. So, my routine, even just like washing your face at the end of the night, something so simple can really just help to prop you up and keep you going in the right direction. Third, express how you're feeling. This happens to be a big thing with me in all elements of life. I kind of like to hold things in my mind and wait to express them until they really make sense to me. And I think that's a fine way to process emotion and kind of express things. But when you're under this kind of pressure, I think it's best to just express as you go and process while you go. Your loved ones are there for you. They want to support you. Express and de-stress. It even rhymes. You can remember it. And then finally, the 4th thing is morning classes. I'm going to try to aim for morning classes next semester. For the first year, I guess at my school at least, we do not get to choose our schedules for the first year. I think that's pretty common across all law schools, but it may not be. And for me, like I was mentioning before, I'm sharpest in the morning And I think that it's best for me scheduling wise to be able to block schedule in the afternoons and not have a class that sort of interrupts my day. And, then I'm going to class, then I have an hour, then I go to class and have 2 hours. I would rather have back-to-back morning classes and then have the rest of the day to knock out everything I need to do. So that is how I would approach revising, is just think through your experiences, take those feelings and emotions that you've now reflected on and use them to make revisions. How do you want to make changes moving forward? Okay, the third thing is reframe. And I tried to find an R because I want it to be all R's so you can remember. Reflect, revise, reframe. So I've talked about this before in a few different podcasts, kind of all over the place, but I'll say it again. When you're going through a hard season or a challenge in life, it's really easy to get stuck in the weeds and only see the challenge around you. But if you will reframe how you look at it and zoom way out to see the forest for all the trees, you'll see yourself more on a journey and give yourself more grace for some of the lower points you're feeling right now, because those are all part of this building up to a larger goal. It's like switchbacks on a mountain. You know what I'm talking about, where you like go back and forth, so you're not like climbing straight up a mountain. You're sort of taking back and forth across so that it's not quite so steep. So you feel like you're making almost no progress at all because it's not that steep of an incline. But then all of a sudden you sort of realize just how high you've climbed, and it's just with short incremental steps, and you're kind of just making little climbs. And if you only stay zoomed in on the challenges that you're experiencing today or this week or this semester, you can kind of drown in how hard everything feels and how there isn't a light at the end of the tunnel, and you can't, it's overwhelming. But the practice of pausing to gain some perspective by looking way out at the bigger picture can help you to reframe, and it can help you to reframe how you approach the challenge, which, as you know, your approach to a problem or a challenge often has so much to do with the outcome. Your mindset is so key. So remembering that this is temporary, this space that you're in, this stress environment that you're in, this is temporary. Law school is only 3 years, sometimes 4 if you're doing another program with it, or if you're extending, you're doing a flex program, some sort of a professional program. But either way, it's temporary, and you can do anything for a little while, right? You can challenge yourself, you can do hard things. So remembering that it's temporary and being able to sort of zoom out and reframe your perspective that this challenge isn't all-encompassing. There is a bigger purpose, there's a bigger goal. That's what I have to say about reframe. And then last, I promised to give some tips and thoughts on the summer before law school. So my very, very good friend Brooke was, I think, my first interview that I did on Legaltini. So if you haven't listened to that episode, highly recommend it. It's pure gold, honestly. She's an incredible person. But I bring her up because, well, she's wonderful. But because she told me her best advice for the summer before law school, and I kind of questioned it or felt like, gosh, I just don't know when I heard her, because I was in the same spot that everyone headed into law school is. I mean, you're panicked that you're starting from behind somehow and you won't be able to catch up, and everybody else is doing this, and it's just comparing yourself. But what Brooke told me to do before law school was this: absolutely nothing. Don't study, don't stress, don't try to do case briefs before, because each school is so different, and the guidance that you might find online might not really apply to how your class is set up, and each professor is going to want different things, so you can't really get prepared before you start. That's part of the challenge, learning on the fly and adapting as needed. So yeah, I kind of agree now. Looking back, I can kind of understand more and subscribe to that, because you want to just relax. You want to come in from like a really great space. You don't want to just be stressing all summer and come in already stressed out and exhausted. You want to come in refreshed and ready to go. Now, what I would recommend that you do before law school, and actually I have a podcast that I did about a year ago that talks specifically about what I think you should do before law school, but it has nothing to do about being prepared for, scholastically prepared for law school. But I think you can prepare your mindset plus a few other things, organization, stuff like that. But not even related to law school, just in general, because you and your mind are going to spend a lot of time together, and it's important to make sure that dynamic is conducive to a successful studying and self-talk. I really recommend the book Mindset by Carol Dweck to nearly every person that I speak to, honestly. And I go into more detail about that book in that other podcast. It's from May 2022, and it's got ice cream in the title. You really can't miss it. But I do recommend that book because it just is, it's a tough time. And if you go into it thinking that you only have so much natural talent or that you're only so smart, the mind games of law school can really get you down. But if you come in knowing that if I put in effort and if I really apply myself and push myself, I can grow and I can become, a reader, or I can become this kind of a person. Honestly, the world is your oyster at that point, versus putting yourself in a box and feeling like this is all that I have to give. So I know that feels a little bit like vague and I dropped some weird words there, but hear me out. Listen to that podcast. You'll get a little bit more information about the book and some of my thoughts about summer before law school. And honestly, get the book. It's life-changing. It literally is life-changing. So that's all that I have for this week's episode, guys. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Jess. This is Legaltini, your very own sip of law school.